The widely popular California Screamin is the largest coaster at Disneyland Resort and is located at Disney's California Adventure. It's become an icon for the park, and I got to experience the coaster for the first time this past October, and just in time too, because the coaster shortly is going to be rethemed to fit in with the new Pixar pier, and so is going to be changing to Incredicoaster, and it'll be painted red and given a new theme to the Incredibles. So California Screamin is going away, but the layout and everything else will stay the same. So in its current form before the change, I'll be reviewing it based off of all the thoughts that I had on it. Now, I only got to ride the coaster twice. I did once in the front and then once towards the back. And actually, I liked the coaster more than I thought I would. From watching all the POVs, the only thing I seemed to really focus on was how there's like a million mid-course brake runs. And I think it certainly is a little over the top, but in the same way that you have that on Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket is to help increase capacity. And man, can they run so many trains on this thing. The line rarely ever gets long because of how fast they are putting these trains through. And they're running like, 5 vehicles on it at once? So I think that's great. I think the most I ever had to wait for it was 20 minutes. And in the world of Disney, that is very good. And not to mention, they do have a single rider line on this. Now, it is kind of a little weird. It's a little hard to find, and you have to go up like an elevator only to then go back down the elevator and stuff, and then they assign like where you're going to sit. So like, it's just kind of a little unusual. But enough about that, let's talk about the ride layout. As soon as you roll out of the station, which is a double loading station, you're going to approach the launch track and come to a stop while Neil Patrick Harris will count you down, and then you accelerate into an awesome launch. I liked this launch more than I thought I would. It was surprisingly forceful, and it shoots you up to the top of this tower. You go up completely surrounded by these rings and then go into your first drop. Interestingly, this is not the largest drop on the coaster. And it's not exactly steep. The drop was like pretty okay. It doesn't really do a whole lot for you. I think I remember you get a little bit of airtime on it. Probably more so in the back. You fall down, again, it's not a steep drop or anything, and this is when you're going to pop into your first mid-course brake run, and what I like about it is how you don't actually slow down when you go through these things. It's purely there for block purposes so you can run more trains. It doesn't actually slow you down, which is, I think, why I liked this coaster more than I was expecting, because I was originally thinking that every mid-course brake run you'd slow down a bit, but that isn't the case. So following that, you're going to go into a couple of turns, and at that point, you're going to start climbing up into a lift hill going up to the highest point on the ride. You're going to go down another drop, this one being the largest drop. Again, it's not really steep at all. You pop up, go into another turn, twist around a bit, and then you actually go into an inversion. This is a vertical loop. And I will say, if any part disappointed me on the coaster, I think it was this. I was expecting the loop would be one of the best parts of it, but I thought it was actually a pretty weak inversion. And that's kind of unfortunate because normally vertical loops are solid. But this one, I don't know, just didn't do it for me. So after you exit, you're going to twist back around, fly under your original structure, kind of go around a bit. And the rest of the ride from here on out is just kind of twisting around. You do have a few airtime hills, however, you don't get any airtime on them. So they felt really unnecessary. I mean, I guess it's better than just having random straight track, but still, I mean, you'd think that you'd get some airtime on these little hills, but that is not the case. And then you go into like a helix or something. I remember this ride just kept on going, and I was like, okay, we're getting near the end, and then it just kept on going. So I was really surprised with the length. I think it's a great thing. This is one of the longest coasters in America. So that's awesome. Like, it nails the ride time part. But for some of that, especially towards the end, it's just kind of like, okay, what is it doing at this point? I don't really know what is going on. But I mean, hey, whatever. I'm fine with it. I think in general, it's an enjoyable coaster. I know for a lot of people, this is going to be one of their childhood favorite coasters. Or for some people, probably the largest coaster that they ride for a long time, one of their earliest big boy coasters. Because so many people go to Disney when they're young, and so this is kind of the way of introducing them to big roller coasters. And so for some people, this may be their first ever looping coaster. So I totally understand that. Disney wanted to appeal to both thrill seekers and family audiences, and I think they achieved that. It's not too extreme, but even as a thrill seeker, I found it to be fun. And it's still a ride that you can ride with your family. So in that aspect, they did a great job. Now, theming wise, there isn't really a whole lot. It's pretty much themed to itself, like Screamin on a roller coaster in California Screamin, so I don't really know what was going on there. But it's become iconic, and it's a beautiful ride to just look at. A lot of it sits like right on the water, so you get some really pretty shots. It's just interesting because certain parts of the ride, it's harder to see from the ground and like get footage of. It's almost like Disney knew which parts of the ride were pretty and which parts were ugly, and so they did what they could to hide the ugly parts. they purposely are showing you what they want you to see, and then hiding behind trees and fences the ugly parts of the ride. So I thought that was really interesting. They were strategic with how they placed this ride. Now, one thing I do want to mention, going in, I didn't realize that this ride had over-the-shoulder restraints. Like, I didn't really do too much research on California Screamin', and so when I actually showed up to ride it, I was like, whoa, there's an over-the-shoulder restraint. I just assumed that it was a lap bar. But after I thought about it for a bit, yeah, probably less people would ride it, and Disney tourists would get freaked out that you were going to fall out because there isn't a shoulder harness for that inversion section. So it's probably smart that it's an over-the-shoulder harness. It didn't really bother me or anything. Like, it's a smooth ride, and the turns aren't jerky or anything. So it's not like you're going to be bashing your head into the restraint or anything. But in general, I'm just more of a fan of lap bars. But I didn't think that the over-the-shoulder restraints took away from the ride. That being said, the over-the-shoulder restraints are kind of bulky. But while we're talking about the trains, what Disney has done, and actually I think this is super handy, they have a pouch where you can stick your loose articles in it so it stays with you and you ride with them. So if you have a backpack, you ride with it. I thought that was interesting, especially since it's a ride a bit larger than most Disney coasters. And then to only add to the experience, they have onboard audio. And this, my friends, is how you do onboard audio well. Some rides in the past, particularly at Six Flags, have tried to do onboard audio, and it has just crashed and burned. It has not gone over well. Disney does onboard audio well. They're playing music throughout the entire ride, and it was effective. I thought it added to the experience. So good job, Disney. I thought the onboard audio was excellent. So to just kind of wrap things up and give this coaster a final score, I'm going to give it an 8. Again, it's not super thrilling, but it's an enjoyable ride. Again, like I said, it was more fun than I thought it was going to be. And I've ridden a lot of roller coasters, so while it's not going to rank particularly high on my list or anything, I think it's a good ride for this park, and it's re-rideable. It's just fun. Can't rides just be fun? They don't have to be anything mind-blowing, be the tallest, the fastest, or be like super intense, or like I said, this ride doesn't even have any airtime. I mean, maybe a little. So it's not like it's going to blow any coaster enthusiasts away, but it's still just a ride that you can ride with some family members, enjoy that Neil Patrick Harris countdown, listen to the onboard audio, and travel all the way up and down Disney's California Adventure. And if you're not a big fan of the ride, well, you can't argue. It's a beautiful ride to watch. I love just sitting back and watch this thing go. It's very picturesque, probably one of the most picturesque coasters I have ever seen. So those are just some of my thoughts on California's Screamin', soon to be Incredicoaster. Let me know what you think of this ride. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? You can post those comments below, and of course stay tuned for more coaster reviews coming soon to Coaster Studios.